Living in the moment, but the moment slipped away. I tried so hard, planning for my future, but I couldn't get past today. Wish our better days were wrapped inside our dreams.
My late brother, my little brother, Will, was the conference manager for the Cutting Edge Music Business Conference.
Okay.
Which has been around for over 25 years.
Yeah.
He was the conference manager for the first 4. He invited me because of all these contacts I had as a music fan, and I'm still working in the energy business at the time, but he invited me to put together the jazz showcase, because they were covering lots of genres, but they had showcases all around New Orleans. And he asked me to put together the jazz showcase, I believe in 1996 and 97, I believe.
Okay.
So I jumped on those contacts that I had. I invited Delfeayo Marsalis and Jeremy Davenport and Wes Anderson and Victor Goines and several other, Michael Ray was one of those. So just for fun, I put together these showcases and kind of helped produce these shows, two different years.
Yeah.
One show each conference, and got a little taste of that. But one of the guys I invited for one of those shows was Kermit Ruffins.
Okay.
And Kermit's manager at the time, who continued to be his manager for over 20 years, Tom Thompson, we started having conversations. And I was talking to him about how I wasn't really that happy with what I was doing. And that one day I was 6 months away from selling my company. And that I wanted to find something different to do. And I thought I might want to be a manager or an agent of artists. And so we started having conversations. And over that next year, Tom contacted me about investing. He wanted me to invest $5,000 in a Kermit Ruffins live recording. So rather than just, and I think I might have made another investment in music, in someone else's music recording, completely separate from all of this, just prior to that. It was a Boys to Men kind of band. And I don't remember their name. But the conversations with Tom evolved into, let's start a record label, which we did. We started it in September 1997.
Yeah.
And it was just set up to record Kermit Ruffins. And we did a record live at Tipitina's. The working title was Swingin' Live. It was recorded on November 14th, 1997, at Tipitina's in front of a packed house. And we jumped into the music business, the two of us. He had been in the music business. He was managing and booking Kermit.
Okay.
And before that, he had managed and booked Tab Benoit.
Okay.
So he had experience in this. The record label side, we didn't, and I had none. So we recorded that in November. We released that album in February 1998.
On your label?
On the label, on Basin Street, which we had, we set up everything properly. I think we probably had the website even, if that was websites back then. But it was a one-page website if we had one. But so we started the label, and in February '98, right around Mardi Gras time, we released what we changed to the Barbecue Swingers Live title. But I was still working in the energy company full time. And the record label was just nights and weekends. And I would go out on the weekends and put flyers on car windows and posters on telephone poles and sit outside Tipitina's every weekend night and put flyers out on the cars in the parking lot across Caddy Corner from there, and
Sure.
up and down streets, up and down the streets by the Maple Leaf. We just lots, as much as I could work nights and weekends to get that thing going. And so we released that in February. On March the 7th, 1998, I got a call from, that day, I was making flyers at Kinko's for an upcoming show. And I ran into Matt Dillon, not the actor, but the guy who was Wynton Marsalis' tour manager.
Okay.
And a drummer. And Matt would put together a band now and then as a leader. And he had a show that night at the Funky Butt, the defunct Funky Butt Jazz Club on Rampart Street. And Matt, we traded flyers. He had just picked up some flyers for his show that night. And he said, come see me tonight. I said, I'll be there. 12:30 in the morning, I'm sound asleep. It's pouring down rain. And I wake up and I said, I told Matt I would go see his show. So I told my late wife, I got to go to the Funky Butt. Caught his show. And at that show, I run into Irvin Mayfield.
Nice.
Who's sitting in on trumpet. And Irvin was 21 years old at the time. And I had just read these two stories about him, one in Gambit and one in Offbeat, about a show that he and Jason Marsalis and Bill Summers, the famous Bill Summers from Summer's Heat and the Headhunters, and Jason Marsalis, who I've known since he was 3 years old. And I didn't really know Irvin that well. I had only met him a time or two. But we ended up talking at the end of the night, and I had read these articles about this band that he had put together with those guys that performed at Snug Harbor and at the Funky Butt, and had a show coming up later that week at House of Blues.
Yeah.
And it talked about how great they were and how Bill Summers had thrown shakeré and percussion instruments to members of the crowd at Snug Harbor and had people on their feet. And so we talked about that for a second. And it also mentioned in the article that they were going to have a record out. They hoped to have a record out in time for Jazz Fest. So Irvin said, I hear you're doing well with Kermit's record. Are you interested in helping us put this out? So I said, well, we could. I'll talk to Tom in the morning. But we'd have to do a deal really quick if you want it out for Jazz Fest. This is March 7th.
Sure.
So we signed a deal. A 4 days later, we were and then they had their show at the House of Blues.
But was that like at the House of Blues show? Was that like the release party?
No,
or was
that was something that was that same week. That was, I think, March 12th.
Gotcha.
This is March the 7th. That show was on March 12th.
Yeah.
So we signed a deal and then immediately went out and helped them promote that show March 12th at the House of Blues. And then they went in the studio for 2 weeks, which was Bill Summers' home studio.
Gotcha.
They recorded the rhythm section. The rhythm section went on, I think, to the Dominican Republic for a jazz festival.
Wow.
And then Bill did his magic on the record, invited people like Cyril Neville in and Manny Landers and Philip Manuel, and
wow. Yeah.
just added layers of percussion and made it a beautiful album. That album was it because we didn't really have our stuff together that first year. That album went on a year later to be the Billboard Latin Jazz Album of the Year.
Wow.
But at the Jazz Fest the next month, Los Hombres Calientes, which was the band they put together, and Kermit Ruffins were the top two selling albums at the Jazz Fest. Los Hombres' album actually was out in time for French Quarter Fest, and we sold crazy numbers of CDs. Those two albums also were on cassette, and they were the only two things I've ever put on cassette.
Yeah.
And we still have about 490 out of the 500 copies we made of each of them. So
It was a changing time.
that was so that year also happened to be the peak in CD sales.
Yeah.
Maybe 2000 was the peak, but 98, 99, 2000 peak
Yeah.
sales of CDs. So so that was our start. So here we are. We're into April '98. We've got 2 records that are doing really well, and I decided I would quit my energy company and just wait for the sale,
Yeah.
but devote full time to the record label. But I also bought Tom out of the company at that time, and he kept. We continued to work closely together, but he was Kermit's manager and agent, and he managed other artists over the years as well. So we continued to work together, but I took the label on my own.
Gotcha.
And at that time, it was just really me and my late wife. And then I brought a college intern on and worked that way all the way until November 2000.
Yeah.